recording is on. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Continental Confidential Live. And this is number 23 with my special guest, Miss Bonnie Whitmore. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, it's so good to see you.
It's really good to see you, too. We have a
It's
lot
been too
to catch
long.
up on.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. It's been too long.
And thank you, Charles. You're our only guest so far. And thank you for joining us. And so I want to get right into, first of all, how are you doing with the shutdown and the stay at home orders that we were under?
Isn't that like the most interesting loaded question? Because it kind of was one beforehand, so now it's like, do you really want the honest answer? So it's kind of the
Yes.
you know, I just got my second vaccine last week,
Mhm.
so I definitely feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So that's been really nice to have that to kind of look forward to, and but it's been tough. It's I realize I'm more social than I thought I was, uh, which I think I was pretty sociable, but like I kind of considered myself to be an introvert. So I mean, it's been nice to slow down.
Right.
So like there's definitely things that I'm really grateful for this past year for. It hasn't all been just um, hardship, but there's definitely been that too. So we've lost some really good friends this past year, and you know, um, I feel like that's been an ongoing thing for the past 4 years, honestly. But it's nice to have a different person in the White House now and getting the rollouts happening. And I'm
Right.
actually booking a real live show next month out in Winslow, Arizona with Betty Sue and Jamie Harris and Mary Gaucher and John D. Graham. We're all going out there and doing that.
Nice.
But yeah, so it's I'm feeling a lot better. I also started meditating. That's I think has also kept me from losing my mind.
For me, it was just staying busy.
Yeah.
So before the storms, I was doing a whole lot of artwork. Now, since the storm, I haven't been able to because of storm damage. Um, But around the time that I could no longer get into my art studio, I was gifted this amazing bread machine and I
Ooh.
started making bread just like crazy. And I don't hardly even eat bread. So I'd make all these loaves and then I'd give them all away.
Nice. That's been a fun thing is like cooking more and like just being in your house and enjoying what your house has to offer.
Right.
Um
Yep.
I just got an Instapot, so that's been my
Ah.
new like I made red beans and rice last night and and some really was curry buttered curry chicken.
Uh-huh.
So, I'm getting into it.
So, Bonnie, let's get started with tell me about your first gig.
My first gig, I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I played at a place called La Kiva down in Terlingua, Texas.
Uh-huh.
Um, and right underneath the, uh, they had a faux uh, fossilized bones on the wall that said Penosaurus erectus. Right underneath that is where we were. And we played my first gig, and I actually found some video of that recently, and like I kind of looked sort of terrified at the time, but because I was just trying to remember all the notes. But my dad taught me Nashville numbers, and you know, my sister played fiddle, my mom sang, so it was all four of us,
So it
performing.
was the family band that did it.
Daddy and the Divas, yes,
Uh-huh.
that was the family band.
And so did you play pretty much continuously after that?
We did regular shows, not like I do now by any means. It wasn't until I was about 15 I started playing professionally for a local musician by the name of Brent Mitchell. My sister was in the band too, and we we were playing every weekend and going all around Texas. I met the Reckless Kelly Boys, opening up some shows with them, and Pat Green and some other Texas music folks or whatever back in the day. And but partly when we got to go, we would play Dessa Hall when that was still around, and that really got me the bug to want to move to Austin. So when I was about 18, um, I moved to Austin and I got a gig playing with Shelley King. And one of my first gigs playing with her, it was a full female band. So Lisa Pancratz was playing drums, and Carolyn Wonderland was on guitar, and like a whole bunch of different singer songwriters. Susan Gibson played that night, Leanne Atherton. So I kind of like my first gig, moving to Austin was sort of like all of these wonderful women that just kind of like took me into the fold. And I worked a lot with Shelley, and I got to play the Continental Club after Tony Price for the first time when I was 18 years old. So it was that's when I met you. And and
Yep.
that was, I loved it when I could come and I could play with somebody, because then I could actually be inside, because otherwise I wasn't allowed.
Now you're a pretty accomplished bass player.
Yeah, I've that's my longest running instrument for me. Like I said, I played since I was about 8, and it's my love, and I've gotten more to the front with it, leading my own bands and stuff like that. And I got my gnarly 8 string over here that I bought off of James McMurtry a couple years ago. So it's my favorite instrument, really. And I've over the past few years, I've gotten to the point where I've been writing songs with them too,
Oh,
which
nice.
I can't believe it took me so long to do that. But that's been like a brand new um, like artistic avenue that I hadn't been down, and so
Hmm.
that's been really fun to venture.
Now I remember for a while you were playing bass for John D. Graham,
Hmm.
and that collaboration ended up leading to the two of you touring together quite frequently.
Yeah, they kind of coincided. As I think I had previously been playing with Sunny Sweeney. Before that, I played with Hayes Carl and toured a lot. But when I moved back to Austin, and because I moved to Nashville for a few years, and then when I came back, it was Sunday nights with John D up in the gallery, and that kind of sparked the initial real kinship and friendship, and from there it just sort of blossomed up. But when we lost Porter, that was definitely something that sort of bonded us for life. And I think
Right.
that fall was the first time I went out with him.
Mhm.
Um, it was really really fun. he's a he's a character, that one.
Yes, indeed. Um, so now, growing up, who were your influences?
My parents were definitely the first, for obvious reasons, but there was because it's kind of funny, because a lot of songs that I have heard them, my dad's interpretations of them. So like I knew who the Beatles were because of the covers that we did,
Uh huh.
but I didn't hear the Beatles version until later. And so that was kind of an interesting way to be introduced to music in some forms. And then there was a few albums that my parents had bought that I just fell in love with, and I basically stole all the Tracy Chapman and Bonnie Raitt's "Nick of Time" and would just play them over and over and over again on my little boombox. And so I kind of equate them to being like part of the ether um, of of the music. My sister influenced a lot of it too. I mean, I don't know that I would have gotten into PM Dawn or Erasure had she not like blossomed me into that. But I think mostly I equate Tracy Chapman and Bonnie Raitt to, because that was such an interesting, like the beginning of the '90s, the folk music that was really prevalent at the time and
Right.
popular, and
Right.
that kind of led to a lot of Lilith Fair um, sort of sounding music, and there was just a lot more women and story songs out there,
Uh huh.
like Sean Colvin, and I got into Gillian Welch really young, and Kim Ritchie, another amazing songwriter.
Mhm.
So it's just I kind of had eclectic taste early on, weirdly enough, before I got to like more popular. Went down the rabbit hole with like Led Zeppelin, and all that stuff.
Didn't we all?
Yeah, right. It was necessary. Same thing with the Beatles. Like like when you don't grow up with that time, like it's a totally different thing to like go back in history, which I thought was really interesting about like Nirvana really influenced a lot of my age range into going back and finding out who Leadbelly was and Woody
Right,
Guthrie, things of that nature that we may not have had an automatic line to. And then I had a lot of classical influence because of my mother. She's a classically trained opera singer and
mhm,
used to take us to operas when we were a kid, and she loved Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday and all of that, and so a lot of jazz, just from being from Denton, Texas, which has such a great program there too. So it was a lot of really cool, interesting, and diverse music that I was sort of just able to absorb because of where I grew up and my surroundings.
right. Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's what we hear as children
Hmm.
that form our basis
Yeah,
for what
totally.
type of musician you become later. Whether you become a more of an instrumentalist or whether you become more of a vocalist or a songwriter or whatever genre of that you fit into
Hmm.
is often so informed by what we hear when we're young.
Well, and being a kid who does experience the adult life by playing in venues,
Right.
bars and things of that nature as a child,
Yep.
it definitely kind of gives you more influence. So, like being able to meet Terry Hendricks at a young age, and Sisters Morales and bands like that, that were really popular at the time. But like I think of the Continental as a church, and my original church in Denton was Dan's bar, Dan Silverleaf now,
Mhm,
but I would be able to go there and hear music with my parents on a fairly regular basis.
mhm.
Asylum Street Spankers just like blew my mind, in middle school, and
Right.
so it's kind of funny to talk about the influences because I feel like a lot of my influences aren't widely well known. But I do know that you do, so that's awesome.
I do. uh, and so, at what point did you start songwriting?
I was 16 when I wrote my first song. I don't play it anymore. But I kind of got the bug for it when I started playing professionally, and um, being able to meet a lot of Texas songwriters of that time. Like I said, Terry Hendricks was definitely a
Mhm,
part of that mix for me, and um, just felt the need to express my own stories, and that's kind of when that started happening. I was journaling a lot too, um, but I really didn't dig into it. I think I really became a better songwriter when I moved to Nashville, and I did a lot of co-writes with a few people too, and Amanda Shires and I moved to Nashville around the same time, so she and I were kind of writing some songs together, and I put a couple of our co-writes on my first record, um, but that kind of got me into it, and the past few years I was kind of trying to write songs that were for Americana and like with that in mind, and then I kind of wanted to write songs that really um, were, I guess, more thoughtful in the type of subjects that I wanted to go into, and really wanting to have that Woody Guthrie influence of disturbing the comfortable and comforting the disturbed, with wanting to open up about depression,
right.
um, about with Last Will and Testament. There's suicide, drug abuse, rape culture, gun violence. There's a lot of different things that are kind of tackled within that record. But I felt like um, I kind of took that literal term that the chicks were given with like "Shut Up and Sing," and I was like, okay, well, I heard that plenty of times playing in little places around Texas, and so I was
Right.
like, okay, well, I'm just gonna write songs about the things that I want to talk about that I think are important, and that kind of opened up a new creative way of writing songs
So,
and have them be more personalized than commercialized
right.
art versus
And
entertainment.
if you had to um, put yourself into a genre,
Hmm.
would it be more folk or protest, or where would
Folk
you go
punk.
with that?
Folk punk, is that a genre that I can sort of glom onto?
Sure, why not?
Well, I feel like the past two records that I made are definitely more rock and roll influenced. Using a lot of distortion and an 8 string bass kind of makes it more growly and fun in that way. But I think I've always had pretty um, driven melody lines, and I really love dynamics and all that kind of stuff. So I don't typically sit in one box, but I feel like punk rock really is about wanting to speak about something specific and being okay with it being controversial. Um, and folk does that too, but I think folk sounds lighter. So I just want to make sure that people know that I'm going to rock their faces.
And how shocking was it when you came out with a record called Don't Fuck with Sad Girls?
Fuck with sad girls. Yeah, that was. I had that wonderful experience of doing the Tertulia,
Uh-huh.
um, right after I'd written that song, and I think it was the "Eat Your Heart Out" um, one, and I'd known like James McMurtry and I have known each other for years. I've played in a number of bands that opened up for him, including like Mondo Signs and Justin Townes Earl over the years. It's just, so our paths had crossed. But I don't think he'd really heard my songs. And when we did that Tertulia and I played Fuck with Sad Girls that night, he came up to me and he said, "Did you write that?" And I said, "Yes." And he's like, "Well, that's a damn good song." And from that, I he asked me to go on tour with him. So that it definitely um, it may be controversial with the fact that it's an explicit, but it has an important message behind it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely, it does.
and it's fun. It's fun to watch people's reactions to it.
Shock value is always cool. I'm sorry.
I had a friend come up to me and she's like, "You get to say that word in every kind of way. It's perfect." And I'm like, "Yes." It's my favorite of the four-letter words. In fact, this necklace, it's really really tiny, but it says "fuck fuck fuck."
Well, and of course, the closest I have is my
Yes.
tattoo,
Yes.
which is fuck cancer, which I
Okay.
got when Nick Curran was diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, of course, died of cancer as well. Uh,
I remember you told me that.
so you mentioned Justin Townes Earl. Now I know that your sister Eleanor and her husband Chris are in Steve Earle's band,
They're part of the Dukes. Yes.
right? And so, did you get to know Justin through that association, or had you met him in Nashville independently?
I met him independently. I actually met him by way of Amanda Shires.
Ah, okay.
Um, and yeah, so that we met and I played bass with him for a little while. We actually we dated for a period of time as well, but I had met him as a separate thing, and that was actually how I met Steve for the first time was through him. Eleanor and Chris hadn't started playing with them just yet, but shortly thereafter, and it, kind of funny is that Eleanor and Chris started playing with them in part because Eleanor was playing with Allison Moore at the
Uh-huh.
time, and then they ended up being in the fold.
I love I love that whole web of connections that happens in the music business.
It's very incestuous, you know.
Oh, hell yes.
it's it's so funny, you know. Just all the different people and interesting webs that get woven together.
Right. And some quite unexpected.
Hmm. For sure. It's amazing how interconnected some people are, and not even realize, you know,
Right.
like it definitely feels like, you know, 7 steps from anybody with it.
Yeah. Is anybody even 7 steps from anybody anymore? I don't know.
I don't know. That was kind of a joke about the Kevin Bacon reference or
Right.
whatever, and they have a
But even
commercial
he
for it
now, I
right
think,
now.
says 3 steps.
Right.
So, while we're on the subject of songwriting,
Hmm.
what song do you wish you had written?
Oh, so many. um, yeah,
It
man.
doesn't have to be just one.
There's a lot of songs that I think I identify in that I kind of wish that I'd written, like the song "Nobody's Girl" from Nick of Time,
Mhm.
which I don't even know who wrote that. I don't think it was Bonnie Raitt, but it was on that record.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Um, but that was definitely kind of a different perspective of a female love, a protagonist in that made me happy. An independent woman that a man was confessing his love for, you know, that kind of like um, just, you know, made me hopeful, I guess, as a young person. But I mean, I kind of wish that I'd written Peter Pan, the James McMurtry song, because I feel like that one's a song that I totally see myself in. Um, there's a lot of John D. Graham songs, honestly. Um, but I don't know. I think I learn the songs that I love
Hmm.
for the most part, and then I try to figure out how to write it myself, write my version of it at some point in time.
Well, and that brings me to, I know that every musician that writes hates to have a favorite,
Yeah. Do I
but
have a favorite?
I know they're your babies and all that. Nobody wants to say, I like this one better than that one. But what is your favorite of your own songs?
I really love "Fuck with Sad Girls." Honestly, that one I felt like was very personalized to myself, but I felt like it also spoke to a lot of people,
Right.
and just the fact that it is like to be able to take something that's controversial and change somebody's perspective of it. That was that felt like a feather in my cap. Like I had accomplished something that I hadn't been able to do quite yet. I mean, the thing about listening to James McMurtry night after night, you hear these wonderful story songs, you know, and I love that. I love the fact that like his songs are basically like novels, you
Yes.
know, in a 3.5 minute time frame,
Mhm.
and with multiple characters and perspectives. And I love that. I just haven't been able to do that myself. I tend to write more emotionally, which I think is why John Dee's songs get to me so much too, because I think he kind of writes a little bit from that, but he's very specific about the words that he uses.
Yes.
Um, so, like, they're two of my favorite songwriters because of that, but they definitely come at it from different ways. And I think I try to find somewhere in between the two, where I'm usually trying to get at has to deal with the emotional expression in the story. And you know, I feel like I've done that a few times successfully, or that's kind of where I draw from. But "Fuck with Sad Girls" was definitely the one that I felt like, you know, it had the benefit of being able to say exactly what I wanted to say, but it also got the reaction that I was hoping to get. Which you know, you're hoping that people are gonna invest into these songs and carry them forward. And that one's definitely had the best longevity.
Yeah, and I believe that is a standout in your songwriting. And you've got some great songs, and they are beautifully crafted,
Thank you.
and that means a lot. Uh, and so, where, Bonnie, do you see your career going over the next couple of years?
Um, I'm hoping to go back out on the road. I know a lot of people have been enjoying the downtime and may not be looking forward to that, but I love to travel. That's in my lexicon too. My dad is retired and has been for many years, but he flew for Delta, and we also owned small airplanes. So we would travel a lot as kids, either by way of airline or in our little Cessna, up to like the top of Maine or something of that sort.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I love that forward perpetual motion sort of thing, and so I really do hope that I get back out there. Eleanor and I have been making a record through this pandemic, and so that's something that I'm looking forward to. And as far as like where my career goes, I don't really have any control over that, so I don't try to think about the optics of it. Like I think if I'm out on the road and playing gigs regularly like I was before, then I'm where I'm supposed to be. So that's kind of my hope and plan, is to keep on that direction. And um, moving from sideman to center stage has definitely been different, and but I would like to see that uh, turn itself into something a little bit more consistent along those lines.
Mhm.
I would love to have an official booking agent for once. That would be nice. Like those are my goals. Is like, can I get a manager please to help me with this stuff, and a booking agent? That would be great. Thanks. Yeah.
Trust me, you don't need a manager.
I mean, it's just it is a lot to demand of our artists these days, to be our own um the social media person, because that's been such a huge part of the dynamic now of where this has gone into. Like, um, again, this is a conversation I've had with McMurtry about, just he never had to do that. He there was like a mystery about it, and now every day, now everybody wants to know like daily what you're doing, and involvement into your art. And that can be really hard, because like creating the art takes a lot of time and effort, and there's not a lot of like, you know uh, it's not easy to box that in. And
Mhm.
so the more that you box in the art, the less art there is to be in it, I guess, is
Right.
kind of the hardship. So I I really just want the opportunity to pursue it. That's more of like where my goal is as far as career goes. I just want the ability to, pursue it and have it be something that I'm really proud of, and that I want to share, and not feel like I'm um, not able to pay my bills or something along those
Right.
lines. So that's the automatic struggle of that. But I've been successful at that for a long time. Like that's one of the things that always makes me laugh, when people are like, "Oh, you play music for a living? You really have? That's all you do?" And they seem really surprised by that. And I'm like, it is possible. It takes a lot of work, but it's
Right.
possible.
It does. Now, Bonnie, what is your actual songwriting process? Do you tend to write lyrics first and add music, or write the instrumental part first and then add lyrics?
I think a lot of my songs, I tend to obsess about certain things sometimes, and so that's my way of sort of processing those emotional whatever I'm going through.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of stuff I do kind of will just journal and just free form whenever I'm like having that, and then if I get something from that, then I'll kind of start chewing on it, so to speak, and creating a song or melody along with it. But it really just depends. Like sometimes I've got lots of little melody ideas. Um, that take a long time to get words to be added to it. Sometimes I have a song that I completely just change the melody and rewrite altogether. Um, Oddly, "Fuck with Sad Girls," I wrote that one in uh, "Hey Babe," which was another song from "Fuck with Sad Girls," in the same day, and it just sort of like I never question when the inspiration comes. I just try to like be a conduit whenever it's like available. And I think like writing regularly and sort of putting things down along those lines or getting an idea. Co-writing is also a totally different perspective because you're kind of bouncing off ideas with somebody else. So you're not having to lift the whole load, trying to create the song.
Hmm.
So that can actually be kind of a great way to make it come together quicker, and sometimes it's a bust. The last song I wrote with my buddy Aaron Lee Tashton, we sat around and on a Zoom call for like 3 hours, didn't write a damn thing, but he had this one line um, called "Racing to the Starting Line," and I just took that, and after we got off and ended up writing a song within 30 minutes or so after we'd finished the call, and I sent him to. I was like, well, here's our song that we co-wrote. like um so
Do you
I don't
have,
know, sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not. Just sort of depends on the song. They
right?
have their own personalities.
Do you have notebooks and post-its of little scraps of lyrics all over the place, or are they mostly all just in a journal form?
um like I'll have like my crush like documents essentially. I won't tell you whose, but I'll just have like different things that I know subject wise that I kind of can go back to, or just anything that I'm thinking about, or if I'm changing my perspective of something, I'll just like write it down in that form and kind of go back. The other thing that I've really gotten into lately, and that's been helping in the creative process, is writing haikus.
Uh-huh.
Just to be able to get like a distinct, emotional thing into you know, three lines of five, seven, 5 syllables, is
Hmm.
really, it's like a puzzle. And I kind of think of songwriting to be a lot like that. It's like, it I don't know what the puzzle's going to be, but when you can get the words to fit where they're supposed to, and it feels like that's, where it sits right, and then you get the whole picture. That's a really amazing feeling.
Right.
Sometimes I write songs and it's and like almost manifesting in a way. Like uh, I've written songs and I didn't even know what I was writing about. And then, like, months later, something happens, and I'm like, oh, now this song makes sense to me. Like, um, sort of an intuitive, foreseeable something that I knew in the back of my subconscious, but like didn't have the physical outlook of it yet.
That's pretty cool. Kind of prescient.
Well, yeah, and I like to like record little audio clips of stuff, and just depending on what I'm feeling like. I try to let the flow of how it happens. I'm not very good at like keeping a structure base.
Uh-huh.
Um, but sometimes it's just opening up a garage band thing and plugging my bass in and messing around, and then all of a sudden there's a song. Like it can come at me that way as much as it can from a journal entry of something that I've been writing down. And lately, what I've been trying to do with Last Will and Testament and releasing of that, the kind of wanting to write songs that aren't just my personal experiences, but like I said, wanting to talk about different stuff. And I've been kind of going into like therapy as the form of like the song being a form of therapy. The song asked for it on Last One Testament when we were out touring. I would make an audience participation song,
Wow.
and so it was call and response. So like people were really enthusiastic about it and screaming, "Ask for it!" At the very beginning, And by the end of the song, people are not wanting, like, I will notice that it dissipates. Like, as the song goes and they realize what the song's about, they're like, I don't want to sing this anymore. And I go,
Right.
good, because you shouldn't say it.
Right.
No woman asks to for that, you know? Like, that's the point. Like, it goes against what you usually are trying to accomplish for a sing along. But for me, I want them to say these words out loud, because when you do, and when you are in a room full of people and having been heard saying that, it gives you perspective that maybe you hadn't gone to yet. And that to me is the healing aspect of music that can really come through when you're able to create a situation where they can actually um, be be not just entertained by, but get an impression of.
Right. And words are so powerful.
Yeah.
And a song like that actually makes the words have more power when they start out by wanting to sing them and then kind of don't want to anymore.
Right.
It's like then they realize the power of the words themselves.
Right.
Mhm.
Because victim blaming is something that we are still prevalently doing. You know,
Yes.
we do it every time a black man is murdered by the policeman, just as much as we do to the woman who says that she was raped by a man. Like,
Right.
these are these are things that I want to change in myself, and if I can help someone else be able to see that perspective and want to do something about it and to speak up for it, you know, that's like, I just want to let other people know that they're not alone in that either.
Right. Yeah. Very powerful.
Like I said, I like to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. That's where I like to be. That's where I feel like I am able to be myself.
I
I gravitate towards all my weirdos because I am one.
and and I think that's a perfect description of your music too.
Thank you.
um, so Bonnie, you've been doing a residency in the Continental Club Gallery for a few years now. Do you happen to know how long it's been?
I think I was going into my fourth year before the pandemic hit.
That sounds right to me. And so, because we've been shut down since mid March of 2020,
Hmm.
the gallery, of course, is closed. And you made this amazing transition into doing the virtual gallery. So, why don't you tell everybody about that?
Well, I kept the same concept of my Thursday nights, with having a guest, you know, and then by putting it into a Zoom format, you know, people can't communicate with each other by, you know, you can't really communicate all that well in the gallery either. It's like, I always made the joke about, like, you can have a personal conversation, but just so you know, it's not personal. You're sharing with the whole room right now. And so, but having the chat box so people can kind of interact that way together, and you get to see people's faces and see their reactions. It kind of feels as close to a gig that we can get right now, and so uh, that was really kind of easy to pivot to this sort of format, because it was already something that we had kind of had established in the gallery.
Uh-huh.
And so at the very beginning, you know, I had Stephanie as my bartender, you know, during the Zooms, and basically tipping out the Continental every month, with whatever we draw in for our weekly show, and so that's also been feeling really good, just because I like, the Continental is my church, and I want to make sure that it survives all this. So that was a good way to be able to pay that forward as much as possible. But
And thank
um,
you for doing that.
oh, my pleasure. And it's also been nice for my guests every week. They really have, like, you know, I tell them I want to tip them what we do, and I explain that to them. And they're like, great. There's been a couple of times where we took especially with the freeze happening, we took about half the month of February and donated it to the food bank, and towards getting people back with their power on and everything along those lines.
Right.
Um, Last week I had Brian Wright, and the Exodin from Nashville, which is where he's based, is also being threatened to be closed or bought over by a developer. So we took a little of the money from last week to put it to that. So, but uh, for me, the Continental is just I love you guys so much, and it makes me feel good. It'd be something I'd be doing anyway if I was playing up there, you know. So like
Right.
it just seemed like the right thing to do. Um, and I hope we can kind of keep that going somehow.
Oh yeah.
Kind of a hybrid of it, but um, we have time discrepancies, so I'll have to figure that out. Because right now it's at 8:30 to 10 on Thursdays is what I've been doing, and this tomorrow night I have Lydia Loveless, which I'm really excited about. Um, she's we're as far as the incestuousness of the industry, I've we've been circling each other for a really long time, but we haven't been able to actually meet and hang out and talk to each other. So
Uh-huh.
I'm really looking forward to kind of getting to know her on a personal level, because these are kind of like musical date nights, is always how I feel. Like even in the Continental Club,
Absolutely.
um, just being able to have that interaction and joking and sharing stories, and that's what just makes it really, um, I feel endearing as far as that goes. So um, but I miss being able to play with each other and sing with each other, which is what we were always able to do in the gallery. So
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a different world without having the club and the gallery open
yeah,
and the Sea Boys.
yeah,
You know, it's been a life-changing experience for me, that's for sure.
no doubt.
After 28 years of being at that back door,
Hmm.
things just changed overnight, you know.
Well, it's been nice too because a lot of the regulars would still come to the Zoom, and so usually I'll get to see Ben every once in a while, and at least there for a while. Leonard, Tim was
Uh-huh.
coming, so that was it was he was one of my last hugs that I got before we shut down, and being able to see him coming to the shows fairly regularly was an added bonus. So
Right.
losing him was rough.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it especially hit all of the gallery
Hmm.
uh, people extra hard.
Yeah,
But I hadn't realized he had spent so much time over at Sea Boys. They were
yeah,
really devastated by it too.
yeah.
So, yeah.
We the thing about that for me, it's I every memory that came back, I would laugh because he was just always such a bubbly, joyful human being,
Yeah.
and just all the goofing around with Stephanie, and just I don't know, it just that's it's gonna be a different place in the gallery without him for sure. But
Mhm.
I think for that reason it was kind of a blessing to not have that ability right now, because I think
Right.
that would have been really hard on a lot of people,
Yeah.
especially Karen.
Yeah. Everybody
But
needed the distance.
a little bit,
Uh-huh.
but um, but it has been this collective, group of people that we've been able to stay close to, and it's broadened now, just because of the ability for it to go anywhere. So fans of mine from Wisconsin or Minnesota or LA or on the West Coast or East Coast. Um, I get to see them every week. I get to see my parents every week with it, and my sister and Chris usually come out. So there's definitely been like silver lining, blessings for having it, and so I hope that it keeps going.
Yes.
Bye,
Uh,
Charles.
Bye, Charles. Thanks for joining us. Um, I know that we're getting closer all the time to being able to reopen.
Mhm.
We're trying to get the majority of our staff um, vaccinated before that happens. But things are moving forward, and we're keeping a running tally of who's been vaccinated. And of course, it cannot be made mandatory for people to be vaccinated. We have to let
Right.
people make their own choice. um, but the more people that are vaccinated, the faster we'll actually be able to reopen all of our
Yeah,
venues.
for sure.
Yeah.
I would hope that a lot of the artists would want that for themselves too.
Yeah,
I
some of the artists have started checking in with me and telling me that they've been vaccinated.
Mhm.
So I know at least that some of our residency people have already had their second doses of either Pfizer or Moderna. And me
Me
too.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't wait.
So I think the whole setback with Johnson and Johnson is going to be a factor
Mhm.
now, with people that were already on the fence,
Yeah.
may not be as willing uh, to take the chance.
I mean, time will tell, of course, but like I feel like also just talking about it and like the more people that you know that have gotten it and knowing the side effects, like most of the side effects have been just mimicking that of people who have gotten sick, and it hasn't lasted more than like a day or two or something along those lines.
Right.
I'm glad that I didn't really have much of a reaction to it. My sister actually got COVID right at the beginning of March, which is what was amazing to me is that I was out with them on tour. We were they were doing a couple shows with the Jayhawks, and we played 2 nights at the Brooklyn Bowl. So we were like right there at the beginning of March when everything was hitting New York.
Uh huh.
And that's when she got it. We were with her through that period of time though, and neither Chris nor I got sick. So that was grateful that happened, but because she got sick right at the beginning, she couldn't get tested for it because they were saving that for people who were really, really sick. But when she went and got her first shot of vaccine, she had a reaction that was similar to, but that was because she had it. And that was
Right.
like another sign if you'd had it, you had more of a reaction to the first than the second dose,
Uh huh.
so on and so forth. But um, I'm just like, I want to get my card laminated, take it with me wherever I go. I'll be like, I'm good. like, uh, like I said, we're gonna do this trip with Roots on the Rails. They do this grouping, and so I think everybody who's coming has been vaccinated. And I mean, I think that it's not gonna go back to normal, but at least to some normalcy, and at least
Right.
having the ability to get together. And I think masks are gonna just be a way of life now. I don't think I'm going to fly on a plane again without one. Just things like that I think are good preventative sort of measures. But
Well, they do say that the the rate of colds and regular flu
yeah,
went down considerably this year because of everybody wearing masks.
I just think it's a good. I think it's a good practice. I mean,
Yeah.
I've witnessed a lot of Asian people over many years doing that for themselves, and I definitely seeing the benefit of that aspect. So it's like it may not be I don't love wearing a mask all the time for sure, but like it's doable, and it definitely you can see that it does a lot to not get people sick. I think that's a good way of being.
Right. I've actually known several people in Texas that wore them anyways just because of pollen seasons,
Yeah,
you
seriously,
know.
the
So,
oak and cedar. My Eleanor was having to do that with the cedar, especially.
yep.
She it's it's not a bad idea. Let's just put it that way. And just like just pollutants in general. Like it's just nice to sort of filter out some of that stuff, and I could see this being something that would be preventative stuff for future if we keep at it. So
And masks are becoming a fashion statement now.
I know. know. It's been kind of cool. I've got one with Betty White on it that says "Still here, bitches." Like, it's so great.
I have a bunch of Native American ones, print ones.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Matoka Eagle in New York, she
Oh,
makes them. And she actually makes them and donates them to Indian reservations, to
I bet it's
hospitals,
hard.
to first responders.
Mm-hmm.
And what she does is she just lets people donate however much they want to give.
Mm-hmm.
So, in effect, when you're donating to her for her masks, she's turning around and using that money to make extra masks that then she gives away.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, and I know there are other people that are doing the same thing. Yeah.
I've been loving the community aspect of what we've been going through. I mean, uh, just the innovativeness, like even watching like a lot of kids getting into like how they can make 3D printing of things in order to like help with manufacturing. Like
Uh huh.
it's pretty it is amazing what we are capable of doing when we are given the opportunity. I think that like the slowing down really has made such a difference on just prioritizing what's important, not uh, even having people being able to work from home and how like beneficial that's been for their families. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, I know there's exceptions to all of this for different people. Every situation is unique, but it's been really kind of inspiring in a lot of ways.
People have been planting gardens.
Yes, the gardening has been
You
incredible.
know, I mean, that's awesome. It's almost like it has made people go back to basics.
Yeah. And
And I can't imagine anything needed more than that.
well, I think that the consumerism in general, like we really do need to be thinking more environmentally. Um, and that's one of the hardships about been going through that is like the wasting aspect of certain things for necessity, especially like plastic bags and things of that nature. But
Right.
um, yeah, it's like can having things that are reusable instead of constantly replacing, like just having something that can just last and willing
Mhm.
to invest in something um, in order for it to have longevity versus convenience always.
Right. Yep. So, Bonnie, we're getting close to wrapping this up, and I'd like to know what words of encouragement would you have for musicians that are starting out right now during the time of COVID when the usual venues have just not been available to people that want to get out and play?
I always say listen to your heart and your intuition. That's the main thing. Um, you have to know that you're doing it for yourself and that the love is pure for that. Um, in my personal opinion, the more authentic you can be with yourself and with your art, the better off that you will see the uh, you will see it bloom and blossom in a way that nothing else can. And that's the real form of art. Like that's just where it needs to come from. So that's
Absolutely. Yes. I agree with that sentiment 100%. Authenticity is the thing.
it shows when it's not. And
Mhm.
I think right now especially we really need more authenticity. Let's it takes too much effort to pretend to be anything else. So,
Well, and in time, well, people can get fooled.
mhm,
In time, if it's not authentic, it always ends up showing in the end.
right, for
So
sure.
yeah, it's not a winning proposition over the long term.
I just think that there has been a trend a lot over the past decade or so where it's the drive has been to be famous, um, not to not because of the art. And if you're not in it for the art, then don't do it. Like, just there's plenty of other things that you can make lots of money on,
Right.
and that aren't going to make you want to tear your hair out, because this is not a nothing is fair in the music industry. And so thinking of it to be that way at all is just, I consider myself a masochist simply because this is what I chose on career day. Like, I literally bleed, not literally, but emotionally, I bleed to write these songs because I have to. That's how I deal with my own personal trauma or my emotions, and
Hmm.
I need this outlet, in order to mentally keep me stable. I was like, I'm grateful that Sims has allowed me to, like, have therapy and over the past few years too, and that's really um, centered me better, and really gave more focus to what it is that I want to do. But the making of music has always been, for my own personal healing. Like, I need it,
Right.
and that's where I feel like, um, that's where the art usually has to come from.
Hmm. And a special shout out to Sims and Ham for
Yeah,
providing sources of healing, both physically, emotionally, mentally, for our music community.
yeah, for sure.
Amazing work they do.
And we have an amazing music community here. I just hope
Yes.
it gets to come back to its full force that it was before.
Hmm. I believe that's going to happen. I
Good.
believe, I believe. Bonnie, thank you so much for joining me today. Is there
Thanks
anything
for
else you'd
having
like to
me.
add before we go?
Um, no, if everybody wants to come join us tomorrow night in my virtual gallery, and those are keep going. I'm gonna keep doing them. I think even when we get back in the actual gallery, that would
Right.
be kind of my hope and goal. Um, but other than that, you can just check out my website and keep up with me that way, and find me on Instagram or Facebook or any of those social media things, and check out the Whitmore sisters, because that's an exciting
Yes,
thing I'm really looking forward to, is my record with my sis.
that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm
And
very
tomorrow
happy.
night's guest for Bonnie's virtual gallery is going to be Lydia Lovelace. You don't want to
Yeah,
miss that.
it's gonna be really good. I can already tell it's gonna be very, very good. So, um,
Yes, ma'am. So, Bonnie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
my pleasure. Thanks
And
for
if
asking.
anyone would like to donate, Bonnie has very graciously asked that donations go to the Continental Club Employee Fund. And you can find that at www.continentalclub.com/closed. That's the page where you can find all of our information. And we do have a whole new round of our t-shirts coming out
Oh yeah,
tomorrow at noon on the Continental Club Facebook page. Um, we have art by Billy Gibbons. He did his own art for his t-shirt. We've
nice.
got White Ghost Shivers. We've got Hot Club of Cowtown. Oh my gosh, there's so many people. Dave Alvin, just a plethora of people. And those t-shirts will be available tomorrow at noon on Facebook, or by going to our Continental Club website, and you would go to www.continentalclub.com/Austin hyphen shop. And while I'm at it, Bonnie's links are Bonnie and Lydia app.rsvpify.com. And that's for tomorrow night's show.
That's tomorrow night. You can also just go to bonniewhitmore.com/virtual gallery, and it'll lead you to all the upcoming guests as well.
Right.
It's tomorrow night.
And I will have all of those links in the uploads.
Yeah.
And these will be
Great.
on all of our Facebook pages and on our YouTube channel, which is Continental Club ATX, all one word.
I'm gonna go check
And
out those T-shirts. I was excited to be part of that for a little bit too. That was fun.
yes, ma'am. So, okay, y'all, I will see you next week. I'm still waiting on confirmation for who next week's guest is. And so, y'all take care until then. Bye, Bonnie. I hope I see you soon.